My husband doesn't love me, and he loves our child even less. The day our son was born, he didn't even glance at him, just tossed him into my arms. Later, his white moonlight returned to the country. The usually aloof man, for the first time, came home drunk as a skunk, smiling as he held our child in his arms. Our son, surprised, wrapped his arms around the man's neck and asked me in a small voice, "Mommy, what's wrong with Uncle?" I squatted down and hugged him, explaining with reddened eyes, "The person Uncle likes is back, so we shouldn't bother him anymore, we're going to move." Welcome everyone to Mini Story, and let me tell you, after taking my son back to his room to sleep, I returned to the guest room, turned on the computer, and started drafting a divorce agreement. This is the 7th year of my marriage to Gu Huaiji. And the 7th year of our separation. Now, I've finally decided to let him go. Knock knock. Pushing open the door, my 7-year-old son came to me holding an airplane model. "Mommy, are we really going to move?" He looked at me, his eyes full of reluctance. "But Uncle hugged me tonight, does that mean he's starting to like me?" I was stunned for a moment, feeling a little dazed. In 7 years of marriage, Gu Huaiji has never allowed our son to call him dad. When he was 2 years old, Gu Huaiji took him to the supermarket, and they ran into an acquaintance on the way. Because our son accidentally called out Dad, Gu Huaiji put the toddler down on the ground, making him walk home by himself. By the time they got home, our son had fallen countless times, his knees and palms were scraped raw. When he was 4 years old, our son begged for a long time before Gu Huaiji agreed to take him to the amusement park. Again, because of our son's unintentional dad, Gu Huaiji let go of his hand, leaving a 4-year-old child lost in the crowd. When we found him, our son was hiding in a bush, crying so hard he was almost suffocating. From then on, our son learned to call him Uncle, and our home became a complete joke. Thinking of this, my nose tingled, and I couldn't help but hug my son tightly. "Lele, the person Uncle likes is coming back, we can't freeload in this house anymore." Our son's eyes dimmed, then he quickly held the airplane model in front of me. "But Mommy, Uncle gave me a present tonight. If he doesn't like me, why would he give me a present?" His expression was so eager to prove that he was a child loved by his father. I opened my mouth, but couldn't say a word. What could I say? What could I say? Should I tell him that Gu Huaiji is happy because his white moonlight is coming back? Or tell him that this gift is actually due to another aunt? I couldn't say anything. I could only silently swallow the heartache and bitterness in my mouth, and, as before, use a whitewashed truth to protect my child. She kissed her son's forehead, wiping away tears from the corners of her eyes where he couldn't see. This was a mother, maintaining a facade even in the face of unbearable pain. Suppressing the urge to sob, I said with a smile, "Lele, if Mommy wanted to take you away from Uncle, would you be willing?" My son's body stiffened for a moment, then he said softly, "Can't we stay?" I haven't even openly called him Dad yet. Tears finally spilled over, and I bit my lip. "Lele, Uncle. He doesn't like us staying in his house. Mommy will take you away, okay?" My son withdrew his hand, clutching the model airplane tightly in his arms. After a long silence, he said, "I want to give Uncle 3 more chances. If he really doesn't like us, then we'll leave him forever." Closing my eyes, I agreed to my son's request. "Okay. Gu Huaiji, my son and I are giving you 3 more chances. After those 3 chances, there will never be a place for you in this family again." Today is Friday, the day Gu Huaiji's white moonlight returns to the country. They were college sweethearts and got engaged after graduation. But a month before the wedding, Yinka fell in love with a French man at first sight. She abandoned Gu Huaiji and went to France without hesitation to pursue true love. From then on, they went their separate ways. Gu Huaiji was depressed for a while because of her. It was at that time that I became his assistant. One drunken night, we had a child. And I became his secret wife, along with my child, unwelcome in his eyes. I printed out the divorce agreement I had drafted yesterday and began preparing my resignation application. Unlike my son, I had grown accustomed to Gu Huaiji's coldness and would no longer foolishly wait for a prodigal son to return. 7 years was enough to dispel all my girlish fantasies. Yin Xin, are you really planning to resign? A colleague glanced at my screen and asked softly. I smiled and offered the excuse I had prepared long ago. Yes, my child's father is abroad, and I plan to take the child there to reunite as a family. The colleague nodded. That's good. It's been hard for you to raise the child alone in the country. You know, we've all secretly thought of you as a single mother. Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh, but it was a bitter laugh. I'm not a single mother, but I'm worse off than one. My eyes began to sting, and I immediately put on a practiced smile, not daring to let anyone notice. After submitting my resignation letter, Gu Huaiji walked in with Yinka. The woman walked ahead, a gentle smile on her face. Gu Huaiji walked behind her, his eyes unwilling to leave her for even a moment. A colleague nudged me and whispered, Yin Xin, did you see that? Our CEO Gu is finally showing some signs of romance. I forced a smile, while a storm raged in my heart. It only takes a decade or so for a cycad to bloom. But Gu Huaiji. Even if I waited a lifetime, I wouldn't get a single glance from him. In the moment of passing by, I couldn't help but call out to him, Why? As soon as I started, the man cast an icy look at me. Assistant Qiao, is there something you need? The distant words contained a warning, warning me to swallow the words in my mouth. Warning me to be mindful of my place. I lowered my eyes, using my last bit of strength to hide their redness. I'm sorry, CEO Gu. Gu Huaiji hummed and immediately withdrew his gaze. He continued to focus intently on Yinka, as if she was his whole world. He is my husband, the father of my child. Yet at this moment, he makes no effort to hide his love for another woman in front of me. It's ironic, and it brings clarity. Thinking of this, I smiled self-deprecatingly. Originally, I wanted to tell him that I was resigning. Now it seems there's no need to. Anyway, he never cares. He doesn't care about my feelings, he doesn't care about our child. And he cares even less about this marriage that exists in name only. Back at my desk, I received a call from my son on his smartwatch. Mom, there's a parent-teacher conference tonight, and school is letting out early today. Uncle Chin is dropping me off to find you. I was stunned for a moment, and instinctively got up and walked outside. I happened to see Gu Huaiji reaching out to fix Yinka's hair. Not far away was my son with his backpack. The little boy stood at the elevator entrance, watching his father intimately interacting with a strange woman. Such gentleness, such patience. Both my son and I have seen it. Just as I was about to take him away, Gu Huaiji also noticed his son. The man's body stiffened, and he subconsciously withdrew his hand. But the next second, he protected the woman and slowly but firmly walked past his son. As if he didn't know him at all. A pang shot through my heart, and I quickly led my son back to my workstation. Before I could explain, my son's eyes turned red as he asked, Mommy, is that the person Uncle likes? In that instant, I lost all strength to speak, and could only nod through my tears. My son didn't ask any more questions, and quietly took out his homework to write. But tears still couldn't help but soak the paper. I hugged my son, who is my whole world. Gu Huaiji, after my son and I leave, you'll only have 2 chances left. After packing up, my son and I prepared to go home. On the way, my son asked me, Mommy, can Uncle come to the parent-teacher conference tonight? In 7 years of marriage, Gu Huaiji had never attended my son's parent-teacher conference. Looking at his expectant eyes, I couldn't bear to refuse, and sent a message to Gu Huaiji. The son has a parent-teacher conference tonight, are you free? The message was sent, and as usual, it sank without a trace. My son lowered his head, hugged his school bag, and asked me, he doesn't want to come, does he? Then, he smiled sensibly again, pretending not to care, and said, it's okay, Uncle is busy, I can understand. Listening to my son's sensible words, my chest felt as if a heavy stone was pressing down on it. It hurt so much that I could barely breathe. Just as I was about to speak, my phone rang. It was a message from Gu Huaiji. "I'm free, I'll come." Surprise instantly surged into my heart, and I almost couldn't wait to show the chat interface to my son. "Lele, did you see that? Dad said he'll come." My son was stunned for a moment, and then immediately raised a happy smile. In 7 years of marriage, this was the first time Gu Huaiji was willing to attend his son's parent-teacher conference. Having received Gu Huaiji's affirmative reply, my son was very excited all the way. He chattered to me about how many times the teacher had praised him this semester, how many high scores he had achieved, and how many certificates he had received. He also said that he had been elected as the monitor of the class this semester, and the teacher promised to announce it at the parent-teacher conference tonight. Speaking of this, my son asked me, "Mommy, if Dad knows I'm doing so well in school, will he like me more, right?" I was stunned for a moment, and then felt even more heartache, silently praying that Gu Huaiji would not break his promise. Before leaving, I hoped that my son's wish could come true, even if it was just us deceiving ourselves. The clock on the wall rang again and again, and the time for the parent-teacher conference was getting closer and closer. Gu Huaiji still didn't appear. However, Iyunka's Moments was updated. In the photo, a man was sitting next to an unfamiliar little boy, teaching him how to build Lego bricks. The caption read, "A good father in the future." I turned my head and looked at the living room. My 7-year-old son was sitting quietly on the sofa, playing with toys. The same Lego, the same age, the same need for companionship. But his father, Gu Huaiji, has never been there for him. Sensing my gaze, my son seemed to understand something and asked me cautiously, "Mom, is Dad busy again?" I stared blankly into my son's eyes, not daring to tell him. His father wasn't busy, he was spending time with other children? I couldn't say anything, just like so many times before. I hugged my son tightly, feeling sorry for him, and told him, "It's okay, you still have Mom. Mom will always be with you." My son didn't ask any more questions, showing his understanding, but his eyes couldn't help but turn red. On the way to school, we both tacitly avoided mentioning Gu Huaiji. It was as if he had never promised anything, and this family had always been just the two of us. "Gu Huaiji, you have one chance left." After parking the car, I took my son and walked into the school. But I froze in place the moment I stepped into the classroom. "Gu Huaiji? Dad?" Sitting by the window, Gu Huaiji looked towards us subconsciously upon hearing this, his pupils shrinking. "What are you doing here?" The surprise in his words made me pause, and a bad feeling arose in my heart. My son had been in elementary school for half a year, but Gu Huaiji didn't even know the name of his class. My son didn't hear clearly and ran excitedly to the man. "Dad, you." Gu Huaiji frowned. "What did you call me?" The expression on my son's face stiffened, and then he changed his address skillfully. "Uncle, you're in the wrong seat. My seat is in the front." He looked at Gu Huaiji, his eyes full of joy. This was the first time Gu Huaiji had attended his son's parent-teacher conference, and the first time he had kept his promise. But this excitement didn't last long. The next second, Gu Huaiji avoided his eyes. "I'm not in the wrong seat. This is my seat." My son was stunned for a moment and was about to speak when he was bumped aside by a figure. "Get out of the way, this is my daddy Gu." Out of maternal instinct, I immediately protected my son in my arms. Gu Huaiji also stood up subconsciously, but stopped when he met Iyunka's surprised gaze. He retracted his hand, shielded the boy behind him, and said stiffly, "Yang didn't mean to, I apologize for him." My son and I were both stunned. He had never received such protection, such care from his father. "Who is he?" I stood up and asked softly. Gu Huaiji was stunned for a moment, and a hint of guilt flashed in his eyes when he met my gaze. "A friend's child." "Is that so?" I murmured, but I understood in my heart. This was the child in Iyunka's photos, the child Gu Huaiji was willing to spend time with. Sure enough, the next second, Iyunka walked in with water, very surprised to see us. "Assistant Chow? Are you here for the parents' meeting too? Why isn't the child's father here?" Hearing this, I subconsciously looked at Gu Huaizhi, but only saw his evasive eyes. I understood in my heart that he was afraid I would expose him. In a daze, I seemed to be back to the day Yinka returned to the country. That day, the usually cold-blooded man got drunk for the first time. And for the first time, he smiled when he heard his son call him daddy. My son and I both thought that we were finally about to find happiness. But the next second, Gu Huaizhi was mumbling Yinka's name. That's when I knew he had mistaken me for someone else. Holding my son's hand, I tightened my grip unconsciously. Just as I was about to speak, my son spoke first. My dad isn't in the country. He's very busy, and I don't want to bother him. One sentence brought shock to both of them. I lowered my head in disbelief, only to see my son's slightly red eyes. He looked at Gu Huaizhi and forced a sensible smile. Uncle Gu, my mom and I will leave first. At this moment, all the sadness was stuck in my chest. As I turned to leave, Gu Huaizhi suddenly grabbed me. What did Lele? What did he just say? Gu Huaizhi looked at his son in shock, as if trying to confirm what he heard. Was it because the child who once couldn't be driven away had now actively learned to avoid suspicion? I tugged at the corner of my mouth, feeling particularly sarcastic. He didn't say anything, President Gu. The parents' meeting is about to start. Pulling my hand away from his, I led my son to the front to sit down. Even after I sat down, I could still feel the burning gaze from behind. But no matter how hot it was, it couldn't warm my heart. The parents' meeting started as scheduled. I hugged my son, hoping for the first time that the teacher's voice could be stricter. To block out the intimate conversation of that family of three behind me. My son was also specially mentioned by the teacher as expected, announcing that he had become the class monitor for this semester and asking him to speak on stage. But my son refused. He was unwilling to go on stage, nor was he willing to speak. I knew he didn't want to see the image of Gu Huaizhi sitting with that child. He didn't want to admit that his father would rather attend a parent-teacher conference for someone else's child. Nor was he willing to let him openly call him dad. After it was over, I took my son to the teacher's office to complete the withdrawal procedures. As we walked out of the school gate, we ran right into Gu Huaizhi, who was waiting for someone. He stood by the side of the road, as if he had been waiting for a long time, with a string of cotton candy in his hand. Why did you take so long? Let's go home together. As Gu Huaizhi spoke, he handed the cotton candy to my son. Go home together. Once, this was the state that my son and I looked forward to the most. Now, it just sounds ironic. My son reached out and took the cotton candy from Gu Huaizhi's hand, and the gloom that had been on his face all night finally turned into a smile. Looking at my son's expectant eyes, my heart softened. Just as I was about to agree, I heard him say, Yinka's child is a transfer student and didn't participate in the previous class committee competition. Why don't you have your son tell the homeroom teacher that he won't be the class monitor this time? Let Yang have the opportunity. A light sentence made my son and I feel cold at the same time. Sure enough, all the gifts were priced in secret. Just like this string of cotton candy, there was a price to pay. Okay, Uncle Gu. It was my son's voice. With red eyes, he put the cotton candy in his mouth. Gu Huaizhi's eyes warmed slightly, and just as he was about to take my son's hand, the phone rang. It was Yinka. Huaizhi, Yang is not feeling well. Can you come find us now? Gu Huaizhi's face changed, and he immediately turned and got into the car. The moment he closed the car door, my son suddenly shouted loudly, Dad. Gu Huaizhi paused as he closed the door and poked his head out to meet his son's slightly red eyes. After a long silence, he said, Be careful. This time, he didn't ask his son to correct himself. But this was the last time my son called him Dad. That night, my son and I packed our luggage and booked plane tickets to go abroad. Neither of us mentioned Gu Huaizhi again, and there would no longer be a lamp in the living room, burning all night waiting for him. Early the next morning, my son and I left with our luggage, checked in, and boarded the plane. Before turning off the phone, I sent Gu Huaizhi one last message. I wish you happiness. The next second, the chat box, which had been silent for a long time, vibrated wildly. My finger lingered on the power button and didn't press it. It's not a hesitation about whether to leave, but a consideration of whether this abrupt departure is truly the best choice. Lele noticed my hesitation, tugged at my sleeve, and reminded me in a muffled voice with his head lowered, "Mom. We should go." Looking at the urgency in his eyes, I suddenly understood everything. I knew Gu Huaixi wasn't good even before, knew he didn't love me, and knew this marriage was a complete and utter mistake. But I still recklessly indulged in it. Because at that time, I really loved him. Now, I have someone I love even more. That's my child. I can't think about amicable partings or prodigal sons turning back anymore. What I need to do is hold my son's hand and stride forward. Turning off my phone, I looked at my son's innocent face, and my heart seemed to be occupied by an inexplicable force. More warming than illusory love. Let's go. Mom and you are going to start a new life. In the company, Gu Huaixi looked at the shutdown notification on the screen, his brows furrowing tighter and tighter. Yesterday, he rushed over, only to find that Yang Yang was just having a stomachache because he wanted to eat ice cream. When he finally managed to coax Yang Yang to sleep and was about to return to school, he realized. It was already too late. My son and I didn't wait for him. Originally, in the car, his mind was filled with many reasons for explanations. But when he saw the empty street, he didn't feel relieved. Instead, he felt a sense of emptiness in his heart. It was as if someone who was believed to always be there had suddenly left. Thinking of this, Gu Huaixi suddenly laughed. How could that be? How could Xiao Yanxin bear to leave him? She wouldn't bear to. Returning to the car, Gu Huaixi drove straight to the company. Just like many times before. Faced with his mistakes, he chose to escape, choosing to let time smooth everything out. 7 years ago, when he discovered he had forced me while drunk, that's how it was. 7 years later, he hurt our child for the sake of Iyunka, and that's how it is now too. The phone rang, it was Iyunka. Huaixi, where are you? Can you come keep me company? I'm so scared. Her voice was very soft, the kind of weakness and pitifulness that Gu Huaixi liked the most. Completely different from Xiao Yanxin. Different. Listening to the phone, Gu Huaixi's mind uncontrollably recalled that chaotic night 7 years ago. No one knew, he was sober. He walked into the wrong room soberly, pulled me into his arms soberly, and soberly accomplished everything that an intoxicated person couldn't. As for why? Gu Huaixi's hand on the steering wheel tightened continuously, and a dark color flashed across his eyes. Because, I was too bright, like a little sun. I am earnest, diligent, positive, and motivated. All the beautiful words seemed to fit me. Especially when looking at him, my eyes were bright, almost making him lose his senses several times. But it was also this brightness that he feared. He was afraid that just like he couldn't keep Iyunka, he wouldn't be able to keep me either. So when he woke up the next day, he pretended to know nothing, stimulating and attacking me with the worst possible tone. Making me feel uneasy, guilty, and self-doubtful. Only in this way would I willingly stay by his side. The less he showed love for me, the more humble I became. He had used this tactic for 7 years. The green light turned on, a glint flashed in Gu Huaixi's eyes, and he drove away from the intersection. Back at the company, Gu Huaixi was about to lie down when his phone lit up. This time, it was a text message, I wish you happiness. Sender, Xiao Yanxin. Bang! Gu Huaixi kicked over the coffee table next to him, his face gloomy. Xiao Yanxin, what do you mean? Are you crazy? Who gave you the guts to say such a thing? No one replied. Gu Huaixi stood up and ran to the parking lot while calling me. Beep beep. The user you dialed is powered off. Damn it! The man cursed a few times and opened the car door. Xiao Yanxin, answer the phone. Still no reply. The wind was strong at night, but it couldn't blow away the fear in Gu Huaixi's heart. It had been half an hour, and I still hadn't responded to him. In 7 years of marriage, this was the first time. Before, no matter how late it was, as long as he called, I would get up immediately and rush to his side. Even if it meant pulling him out of a strange woman's arms. Thinking of what happened tonight, Gu Huaizhi pursed his thin lips. Could it be that he had gone too far with me? His breathing calmed down a bit, and the corners of his mouth unconsciously turned up. Looks like I'm really jealous this time. Forget it, this time he'll just lower his head and coax me properly. Still, I need to teach him a lesson, lest my heart grows too big in the future. Looking at the increasingly close villa, Gu Huaizhi suppressed the excitement in his heart and returned to his usual indifference. Walking into the yard, looking at the villa without a single light, Gu Huaizhi sneered. This time, at least the act is a bit convincing. Pushing open the door, the man's cold and gorgeous voice echoed in the villa, "Xiao Yanxin, I'm back." No reply. Gu Huaizhi's face darkened, but he still suppressed the unease in his heart. "TSK, stop pretending, Xiao Yanxin? If you don't come down, I'm taking back this olive branch." "Xiao Yanxin." Gu Huaizhi finally couldn't bear it anymore. He ran upstairs in 3 steps and pushed open the bedroom door. Xiao. There was no one on the bed. Damn it! Turning around, he went to Leilei's room and pushed the door open. "Xiao Yanxin, my patience is." There was no one there either. In the room full of childishness, there was only an unfinished Lego set on the ground, signifying the owner's lack of attachment. Staggering to the Lego, Gu Huaizhi recognized it. This was what he bought for his son. On the 9th day after his son's 6th birthday. As before, Gu Huaizhi deliberately made an appointment with his friends to fool around in the bar until dawn on his son's birthday. Waiting for me and my son for hours, making phone call after phone call. Waiting for the birthday cake to melt, waiting for the clock to strike 12. He came home drunk and reeking of alcohol. That night, looking at my son's bloodshot eyes, I lost my temper with him for the first time. And Gu Huaizhi? He looked at me mockingly and said, "Xiao Yanxin, who do you think you are? If you hadn't deliberately climbed into my bed back then, do you think you could have this child and be my missus?" Gu. "Xiao Yanxin, people should be content." He watched me choke on his words again, and began to doubt myself again, feeling smug. So on the 9th day after his son's birthday, he took out the gift he had prepared. As a reward. Rewarding me and my son for another act of obedience. But now, my son and I are gone. Without warning. Without looking back. Gu Huaizhi covered his face and collapsed helplessly on the ground. Everything was out of control. The phone rang again. Gu Huaizhi suddenly sat up and picked up the phone. "Xiao Yanxin, you." "Huaizhi?" Yunka's voice came through the phone. Gu Huaizhi's face sank, without his usual tenderness. "What's the matter?" Yunka was stunned for a moment, as if a little surprised, but continued, "Huaizhi, the water pipe in our house is broken, and Yang Yang and I don't know what to do now. Can you help us?" "How can I help?" Yunka was a little embarrassed and stammered, "I was wondering if we could stay at your place first." "Heh. You think quite highly of yourself." Gu Huaizhi laughed, his voice chillingly cold. With my son and I gone, Yunka has no value anymore. So he didn't bother to pretend anymore. "Yunka, I thought you were a smart person." The breathing on the other end of the phone stifled, and she asked in disbelief, "Huaizhi, what? What are you saying?" Gu Huaizhi looked up at the drawing left by his son on the wall, his voice low. "Yunka, what makes you think I would want a woman who betrayed me? Especially a second-hand one." Something fell to the ground, indicating the other person's agitation. "Huaizhi, I." Gu Huaizhi was too lazy to listen and hung up the phone directly. He lay on the ground all night until dawn. He finally fell asleep, only to be woken up by a call from the company. "President Gu, something bad has happened. The client has temporarily gone back on the plan that Assistant Xiao was in charge of, and now the project is stuck. Please come quickly." Gu Huaizhi frowned and subconsciously replied, "Then call Assistant Xiao and have her solve it." The manager paused for a second and said cautiously, President Gu, Assistant Xiao has already resigned. And now, we can't reach her. Gu Huaiji opened his eyes, looking shocked. Resign? Who approved her resignation? How come I didn't know? A barrage of questions left the manager dumbfounded. Assistant Xiao said her husband works in the United States and she's taking her child to reunite with her family. So she submitted her resignation letter, and it was approved according to the process. President Gu, didn't you know? Gu Huaiji was stunned. He did recall finding a resignation letter on his computer before. But at the time, Yunko was pestering him with something, so he didn't pay attention and approved it without even looking. Thinking of this, he clenched his fist, filled with regret. It's all that woman's fault. If it weren't for her. Damn it. But the next second, he quickly seized the key point in the manager's words. They went to America? The manager nodded, yes. Assistant Xiao said she wanted to take the opportunity to study abroad. Hanging up the phone, Gu Huaiji immediately booked a flight to the United States. Qiao Yanqin, you can never escape me in this lifetime. Meanwhile, in America. Thanks to the last shred of conscience Gu Huaiji possessed. After 7 years of marriage, the assets in my hands are still quite substantial, enough for me to quickly settle down with my son in a strange place. After a good night's sleep, I took my son to briefly meet the surrounding neighbors. If all goes well, this will be our home from now on. To be honest. Before coming to America, I always thought divorce was a big deal. I thought that leaving Gu Huaiji would leave me heartbroken and in great pain. After coming to America, I suddenly realized. It turns out that not having to wait for a man to come home is so happy, so easy. I no longer have to get up early to make breakfast for Gu Huaiji, no longer have to endure his cold words. I don't have to smell the perfume lingering on his clothes, getting angry while coldly throwing them into the washing machine. I realized, divorce is so great. Even my son, who always wanted to be close to Gu Huaiji, couldn't help but exclaim after seeing the steaming food on the table, Mom, if only we had left Uncle sooner. Hearing this, I couldn't help but smile, but I felt a twinge of bitterness in my heart. Gu Huaiji is a scumbag, and even more of a jerk. He clearly hasn't fulfilled any of his responsibilities as a father, but he always likes to point fingers at me and my son, relying on his fatherly status. For example, no junk food allowed, no talking during meals, no knocking over dishes with chopsticks. And so on. Once my son doesn't comply, he'll say, Qiao Yanqin, I really don't know how you can be a mother. Can't you even teach the most basic manners? In the past, I was used to being suppressed by him, and I would only weakly say sorry at this time. Now that I don't love him anymore, I just want to say to him, you're full of crap. Thinking of this, I kissed my son's little face, my smile full of hope. Lele, we will definitely get better and better in the future. My son nodded, revealing the tooth he had lost, his smile bright, I believe in Mom. While we were playing around, the doorbell rang. Gu Huaiji's hoarse voice came from outside the door, Qiao Yanqin, open the door. In an instant, my son and I both unconsciously restrained the smiles on our faces. I wasn't surprised that he found us so quickly. After all, we haven't officially divorced yet, and many things are still tied together. My son glanced at me uneasily and whispered, Mom, Uncle he. I touched his head and asked him, Mom needs to have a good chat with Uncle, can you go upstairs and play for a while, okay? My son hesitated for a moment and nodded in agreement. After he went upstairs, I opened the door. Gu Huaiji's face was a little haggard, as if he hadn't slept for a long time, and he had stubble on his chin. Completely different from his usual image as a financial elite. When he saw me, Gu Huaiji immediately put on an angry expression. Qiao Yanqin, you've become bold, haven't you? You actually dare not answer my calls. Do you believe I believe you. I said directly. Gu Huaiji's words choked in his throat, and he stared at me intently, as if searching for my former weakness. But he was destined to be disappointed. I was weak because I loved him, but now that I don't love him anymore, the lost brain has grown back. Smiling, I stepped aside to signal him to come in. After all, this is where my son and I plan to settle down, and I don't want others to know that my ex-husband is a madman. Sitting down on the sofa, Gu Huaizhi looked around and sneered, "You can only live in a place like this after leaving me?" I also laughed. There's no other way. I don't need to rush to be a father to my ex's child, so of course I can live here. My words were sharp, but Gu Huaizhi laughed. He looked at me, his eyes full of determination. "Sure enough, you're still jealous. For the sake of you following me for 7 years, I can give you a chance. Come back to China with me, and I'll let bygones be bygones regarding what happened before." My hand trembled as I poured coffee, and I swear I really wanted to splash the boiling coffee in the pot on his face. I wondered just how thick-skinned he could be. But I held back. Getting into trouble for a scumbag like him just wasn't worth it. I put down my coffee, took the printed divorce agreement from the drawer, and tossed it onto the table. As the paper slid across the surface, I remembered how Gu Huaizhi used to throw files at me at every turn. Anyone who didn't know better would think he had Parkinson's. Now it was my turn, and it felt great. Gu Huaizhi's brow twitched, but he still picked up the document from the floor. Looking at the bold words "divorce agreement" on the cover, the arrogance on his face finally disappeared. "Qiao Yanqin, are you serious?" I nodded. "Or what?" Gu Huaizhi's pupils contracted, then he forced a smile, trying to appear calm. "Qiao Yanqin, stop messing around. I know you're just angry at Yinka. Don't worry, as long as you come back with me, I'll never contact her again." He said it with such conviction, as if he really meant it. But I didn't care anymore. I took the divorce agreement and flipped to the last page. "I've already signed it. I won't fight you for the marital property. Except for the property under my name, give me 50 million yuan in a lump sum. In the future, my son and I will definitely not bother you as you enjoy your life." I thought, I've already made such a big concession, he should be satisfied. After all, as long as we can buy out these connections with money, it's a worthwhile deal for him and for me. But Gu Huaizhi got even angrier. He snatched the divorce agreement and tore it to shreds. "I don't agree to a divorce, Qiao Yanqin, you'll never leave me." Looking at his bloodshot eyes, I was suddenly stunned, and a feeling I had never anticipated welled up in my heart. "You wouldn't be reluctant to let me go, would you?" Even as I said it, I felt like laughing. Gu Huaizhi was silent. He swallowed, as if his disguise had been torn away, and a hint of guilt and helplessness appeared in his eyes. After a long time, he finally hummed in agreement. I suddenly laughed until tears came to my eyes. A huge sense of absurdity enveloped me completely. "Gu Huaizhi, you like me? You actually like me? Heh. You actually like me." Gu Huaizhi pursed his lips and reached out to me. "Don't touch me." I forcefully slapped his hand away, my eyes cold. "Gu Huaizhi, you disgust me." The man froze, followed by disbelief. "Qiao Yanqin, what did you say?" "I'm telling you, you make me sick to my stomach." Gu Huaizhi was completely enraged. "Qiao Yanqin, have you lost it? How can you talk to me like that? You clearly love me very much, don't you?" I wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes, regained my composure, and walked step by step towards Gu Huaizhi. "Yes, Gu Huaizhi, I used to love you very much. But I'm a person, not your toy. What makes you think you can take advantage of my love, act recklessly, and hurt me again and again? What makes you think that after you hurt me, a simple "I love you" will make me wag my tail and forgive you, returning to your side? What makes you think that I still love you? What makes you think that?" As I approached him step by step, Gu Huaizhi retreated step by step, until he crashed into the soft sofa and slumped down, powerless. He hadn't seen me this resolute in a long time. Not since that night. In a daze, he remembered interviewing me. He asked me, "Qiao Yanqin, your resume isn't particularly outstanding, and you don't have any relevant industry experience. Why would you want to apply to our company? What makes you think we'll hire you? And I said, because I'm willing to learn, willing to work hard, and I'm not afraid of challenges or difficulties. As long as you give me a chance, I will definitely impress you. 7 years later, I really did impress him. That confident and determined girl, having weathered 7 years of storms, once again stood before him. Even more resilient than before. But he had no chance to keep her anymore. His lowered hands gradually clenched into fists, causing his heart to ache. Looking at the man who couldn't speak, a hint of disdain and irony flashed in my eyes. Disdain for Gu Huaizhi, irony for myself. For actually wallowing in a nightmare woven by such a person for 7 years. 7 years, how many 7 years does one have in a lifetime? So wasted. Just as I was lost in thought, Gu Huaizhi suddenly spoke, "What about our son?" What? I didn't react for a moment. Gu Huaizhi raised his head, his eyes filled with madness. "If you want to divorce me, I won't give you custody of our son. In the future, I won't let you see him either. Are you really decided?" You. I glared at Gu Huaizhi, feeling like he was a demon. Gu Huaizhi twitched the corner of his mouth, as if he had found my weakness. "As long as you come back with me, I will definitely treat you and our son well in the future. We will have a happy family. Yen Xin, can you bear to let our son be without a mother?" He looked at me, the triumph in his eyes almost overflowing. This time, it was my turn to panic. Just as I was about to speak, a child's voice came from upstairs. "In your dreams." My son rushed down from upstairs, his voice hoarse, full of anger. "I only recognize my mom, you're not my dad. I don't have a dad like you." He pointed at Gu Huaizhi, his face, 5 parts similar, filled with anger and fear. He was afraid of never seeing me again. He was also afraid that I would compromise for him and return to that hellish home. Gu Huaizhi's face turned stern, his voice cold. "That's not up to you." My son wiped away his tears, as if he had made up his mind. "Mom, don't worry about me, divorce Dad." He held my hand, trembling slightly, but continued to speak. "Mom, I'll take care of myself, you don't have to worry about me." "When?" He sniffled, holding back his sobs. "When I grow up, I'll come find you again." At that moment, I felt pain that was almost unbearable. If my child wasn't good to me, I could give up without hesitation, but Lele wasn't like that. From the moment he was born, we supported each other. He's not just my child, but also my family. For him, I'm willing to give everything. With this in mind, an idea in my heart gradually became clear. "Okay, I promise you." My son immediately turned his head, crying and begging me not to go back. Gu Huaizhi, however, immediately laughed, eagerly pulling me into his arms, weeping with joy. "Yen Xin, I will treat you well, definitely." I suppressed the urge to vomit, stiffly allowing him to embrace me. "Gu Huaizhi, you need to remember, you were the one who pushed things to the extreme first. So in the future, don't blame me." After returning to China, Gu Huaizhi really seemed like a different person. Not only did he stop contacting Yinka, but he also changed his usual coldness, becoming extremely enthusiastic towards me and our son. Almost to the point of fulfilling every request. But my son and I didn't appreciate it, treating him with the same indifference he had shown us before. When we returned to China, my son almost cried himself unconscious. Especially when boarding the plane, he even bit Gu Huaizhi's wrist, trying to make him release the hand that was holding me. I felt very sorry for him, but I couldn't find a chance to explain to my son. It wasn't until after returning to China that I found an opportunity to explain to my son, asking him to give me some time and that I would handle everything. Gu Huaizhi didn't know what I was thinking, and only thought that he had me under his control, becoming even more arrogant. Plus, my previous mention of divorce had indeed scared him, so he provided many conveniences. I had him restore my position in the company, and while working, I secretly gathered the company's client resources. At the same time, I spent a lot of money to hire a detective to keep a close eye on Yinka. Gu Huaizhi is the best stepping stone Yinka could reach, she wouldn't give up easily. Sure enough, in less than half a month, Yunka couldn't hold back. She didn't dare to blame Gu Huaizhi, so she placed all her anger and hatred on me. She believed that as long as my son and I died, she could replace me and rise to the top. After receiving the news that Yunka hired someone to cause a car accident, I realized that the opportunity had finally arrived. So, I first made the excuse that the car needed maintenance and had Gu Huaizhi drive my car away. Then, I said I had to work overtime and asked Gu Huaizhi to pick up our son. But in reality, I had already excused our son from school and sent him to painting lessons. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the news of the car accident came. Gu Huaizhi collided with a van on his way home from school. His condition was unknown. Upon receiving the news from the hospital, I took out the divorce agreement from the drawer and smiled. Originally, I really just wanted 50 million and would have been satisfied. Unfortunately, you were not content. The doctor diagnosed that Gu Huaizhi's leg was ruined, and he became disabled. During his recovery, I announced my identity as Mrs. Gu temporarily took over his duties and became the new head of the company. And Gu Huaizhi, unable to accept the fact that he was disabled, became increasingly irritable, often throwing things. Whether it was doctors or nurses, their opinions were very negative. I understood their hard work, so after Gu Huaizhi was hospitalized for a month, I transferred him to a nursing home. More than half of the patients here have mental illnesses, which is very suitable for him. Half a year later, I completely took over all the company's affairs. Gu Huaizhi also went completely crazy. But we didn't get divorced. After all, this is what he always wanted. So, I simply inherited all his property as his wife, and by the way, used his money to get to know many young people. You see, that's why people should be content. A contented mind is a perpetual feast.